Good evening, dear listeners. I hope you're all having a pleasant day today. Tonight I'll be reading some Christmas stories for a little while before turning in. I thought I'd start with Christmas Greetings from a Fairy to a Child by Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll's Christmas Greetings from a Fairy to a Child was written by Lewis Carroll to celebrate Christmas in 1867. It is retrieved from his book, Alice's Adventures Underground. The original manuscript of Carroll's most well-known fanciful adventure, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Alright, let's get started. Lady dear, if fairies may for a moment lay aside cunning tricks and elfish play, 'tis at happy Christmas tide, we have heard the children say, gentle children whom we love, long ago on Christmas Day came a message from above. Still, as Christmas tide comes round, they remember it again, echoes still the joyful sound, peace on earth and goodwill to men. Yet the hearts must childlike be, where such heavenly guests abide, unto children in their glee, all the year is Christmas tide, thus forgetting tricks and play, for a moment, lady dear, we wish you, if we may, Merry Christmas, Glad New Year. Lewis Carroll, Christmas, 1867. Alright, that was a nice little starter. Let's see, what should we read next? The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by Frank Baum. Youth 1 Breeze. Have you heard of the great forest of Breeze? Nurse used to sing of it when I was a child. She sang of the big tree trunks standing close together, with their roots intertwining below the earth, and their branches intertwining above it, of their rough coating of bark and queer gnarled limbs, of the bushy foliage that roofed the entire forest, save where the sunbeams found a path through which to touch the ground in little spots and cast weird and curious shadows over the mosses, lichens, and drifts of dried leaves. The forest of Breeze is mighty and grand and awesome to those who steal beneath its shade. Coming from the meadows, sunlit meadows, into its mazes, seems at first gloomy, then pleasant, and afterward filled with never-ending delights. For hundreds of years it has flourished in all its magnificence, the silence, its enclosure unbroken save by the chirp of busy chisnauks, the growl of wild beasts, and the songs of birds. Yet Breeze has its inhabitants for all this. Nature peopled it, beginning with fairies, nooks, rowls, and nymphs. As long as the forest stands, it will be a home, a refuge, and a playground to these sweet immortals, who revel undisturbed in its depths. Civilization has never yet reached Breeze. Whatever, I wonder. Once, so long ago, our great-grandfathers could scarcely have heard it mentioned, there lived, within the great forest of Breeze, a wood nymph named Nesile. She was closely related to the mighty Queen Zerlik, and her home beneath the shade of a wide-spreading oak. Once every year, on budding day. Okay, this actually seems like it's a really long story. I don't know if I want to spend over an hour reading this one. Let's go back. This one seems like a better choice. Christmas or the Good Fairy by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Oh dear, Christmas is coming in a fortnight. I have got to think up presents for everybody, said young Ellen Stewart, as she leaned languidly back in her chair. Dear me, it's so tedious. Everybody has got everything that can be thought of. Oh no, said her confidential advisor, Miss Lester, in a soothing tone. You have means of buying everything you can fancy. When every shop and store is glittering with all manner of splendors, you cannot surely be at a loss. But now just listen, to begin with. There's Mamma, what can I get for her? I have thought of ever so many things. She has 3 card cases, 4 gold thimbles, 2 or 3 gold chains, 2 writing desks of different patterns, and then, as to rings, brooches, boxes, and all other things, I think she might be sick of the sight of them. I'm sure I am, she said, languidly gazing on her white and jeweled fingers. The view of the case seemed rather puzzling to the advisor, and there was silence for a few minutes. When Ellen, yawning, resumed, and there's cousins Jane and Mary. I suppose they'll be coming down on me with a whole load of presents. Mrs. B will be sending me something she did last year. And there's cousins William and Tom. I must get them something. I would like to do it well enough, if only I knew what to get. Well, said Eleanor's aunt, who had been sitting quietly rattling her knitting needles during this speech. It's a pity you are not such a subject to practice on as I was when I was a girl. Presents did not fly about in those days as they do now. I remember when I was 10 years old, my father gave me the most marvelous, ugly sewer dog for a Christmas gift, and I was perfectly delighted with it. The very idea of a present was new to us. Dear aunt, how delighted I would be if I had any such fresh, unsophisticated body to get presents for. But to get for presents or get for people that have more than I know what to do with now, to add pictures, books, and gilding, when the center tables are loaded with them now, rings and jewels when they are a drug. I wish myself I were not sick, sated, and tired with having everything in the world given to me. Well, Eleanor, said her aunt, if you really want unsophisticated subjects to practice on, I can put you in the way of it. I can show you more than one family whom you might seem to be a very good fairy, and where such gifts as you could give with all the ease would seem like a magic dream. Why, that would really be worthwhile, aunt. Look over in the back alley, said her aunt. You see those buildings? That miserable yellow shanties, yes? Well, I have several acquaintances there who've never been tired of Christmas gifts, or gifts of any other kind, I assure you. You can make quite a sensation over there. Well, who's there? Let us know. Do you remember Owen that used to make your shoes? Yes, I remember something about him. Well, he has fallen into a consumption and cannot work anymore. He, his wife, and 3 little children live in one of the rooms. How do they get along? His wife takes in sewing sometimes, and sometimes goes out washing. Poor Owen. I was over there yesterday. He looks thin and wasted. His wife was saying he was parched with constant fever and had very little appetite. She had, with great self-denial by restricting all necessary food, got him 2 or 3 oranges. The poor fellow seems so eager after them. Poor fellow, said Eleanor involuntarily. Now, said her aunt. I suppose, Owen's wife, you'd get up on Christmas morning and find at the door a couple of dozen of oranges and some of those nice white grapes such as you had your party at last week. Don't you think it would make a sensation? Why, yes, I think very likely it might. But who else, aunt? You spoke of a great many. Well, on the lower floor, there's a neat little room. It's always kept perfectly trim and tidy. It belongs to a young couple who have nothing beyond the husband's day wages to live on. They are, nevertheless, as cheerful and chipper as a couple of wrens. She is up and down half a dozen times a day to help. Or Mrs. Owen is a baby of her own, about 5 months old, and of course does all the cooking, washing, and ironing herself and her husband. Yet, when Mrs. Owen goes out to wash, she takes her baby and keeps it whole days for her. I'm sure she deserves that. The good fairy should smile on her, said Eleanor. One baby exhausts my stock of virtues very rapidly. But you ought to see the baby, said Auntie. So plump, so rosy and good-natured, and always as clean as a lily. This baby is sort of a household shrine. Nothing is too sacred or too good for it. I believe the little thrifty woman feels only one temptation to be extravagant, and that is to get some ornaments to adorn this little divinity. Why, did she ever tell you so? No? When I was coming down the stairs, one day, the door of their room was partly open, and I saw a peddler there with an open box. John, the husband, was standing with a little purple cap in his hand, which he was regarded with mystified, admiring air, as if he didn't quite comprehend it, and a trim little Mary gazing at it with longing eyes. Oh, I think we might get it, said John. Oh no, she said regretfully. Yet I wish we could, it's so pretty. Say no more, aunt. See, the good fairy must pop a cap into the window on Christmas morning. Indeed, it shall be done. Father will wonder where it came from. Talk about it for months to come. Well then, continued her aunt, in the street next to ours, there is a miserable building. It looks as if it were just going to topple over. And away up in the 3rd story, in a little room just under the eaves, live 2 poor, lonely old women. They are both nearly on to 90. I was there day before yesterday. One of them is constantly confined to her bed with rheumatism, the other, weak and feeble, with failing sight and trembling hands, toddles about her only helper. And they are entirely dependent on charity. Can't they do anything? Can't they knit? Said Eleanor. You are young and strong, Eleanor, and have quick eyes and nimble fingers. How long would it take you to knit a pair of stockings? What an idea. I never tried. I think you'd get a pair done in a week, perhaps. And if someone gave you 25 cents for them, now this you had to get food, pay room rent, and buy coal for your fire, and oil for your lamp. Stop, aunt, for pity's sake. Well, I will stop. They can't. They must pay so much every month. That miserable shall they live in or be turned into the street. Meal and flour that some kind person sends off for them just as it does for others. They must get more or starve, and the coal is now scarce and high-priced. Oh, aunt, I'm quite convinced, I'm sure. Don't run me down and annihilate me with all these terrible realities. What shall I do to play good fairy to these poor old women? If you'll give me full power, Eleanor, I'll put up a basket to be sent to them that will give them something to remember all winter. Certainly I will. Let me see if I can't think of something myself. Well, Eleanor, suppose then, some 50 or 60 years hence, if you were old and your father, mother, aunts, and uncles now so thick around you, lay cold and silent in so many graves, you have somehow got away off to a strange city where you were never known, You live in a miserable garret where snow blows through at night through cracks in the fire. It is very apt to grout the old cracked stove. You sit crouching over the dying embers the evening before Christmas. Nobody to speak to you, nobody to care for you, except another poor old soul who lies moaning in the bed. Now, what would you like to have sent to you? Who wants? What a dismal picture. Yet, Ella, all poor, forsaken old women are made of young girls who expected it in their youth as little as you do, perhaps. Say no more, aunt. Why, let me see. Comfortable warm shawl for each of these poor women. And then let me see. Oh, some tea? Nothing goes down with old women like tea. And I'll make John wheel some coal over to them, and, aunt, it would not be a very bad thought to send them a new stove. I remember the other day when Mom was pricing stoves, I saw some such nice ones for $2 or $3. For a new hand, Ella, you work up the idea very well, said her aunt. But how much ought I to give for any one case, these women say? How much did you give last year for any single Christmas present? Why, $6 or $7 for some. Those elegant souvenirs were $7. That ring I gave Mrs. B was $20. And do you suppose Mrs. B was any happier for it? No, really. I don't think she cared much about it. I had to give her something because she had sent me something the year before, and I did not want to send a partially present to one in her circumstances. Then Ella, give the same to any poor, distressed, suffering creature who really needs it, and see in how many forms of good such a sum will appear. That one hard, cold, glittering ring that now cheers nobody and means nothing, that you give because you must, and she takes because she must, might, if broken up into smaller sums, send real warmth and heartfelt gladness through many a cold and cheerless dwelling, through many an aching heart. You're getting to be an orator, aunt. Don't you approve of Christmas presents among friends and equals? Yes, indeed, said her aunt, stroking her head. I have some Christmas presents that did me a world of good. A little bookmark, for instance, that a certain niece of mine worked for me with wonderful secrecy 3 years ago, when she was not a young lady with a purse full of money. That bookmark was a true Christmas present. My young couple across the way are plotting a profound surprise to each other Christmas morning. John has contrived, by an hour of extra work every evening, to lay by enough to get Mary a new calico dress. And she, poor soul, has bargained away the only thing in the jewelry line she ever possessed to be laid out on a new hat for him. I know, too, a washerwoman who has a poor lame boy, patient, gentle little fellow, who's lain quietly for weeks and months in his little crib, and his mother is going to give him a splendid Christmas present. What is it, pray? A whole orange. Don't laugh. She will pay 10 whole cents for it. For it shall be none of your common oranges, but one picked for the very best going. She has put by the money, a cent at a time, for a whole month. And nobody knows which will be happiest in it, Willie or his mother. These are such Christmas presents as I like to think of. Gifts coming from love and tending to produce love. These are the appropriate gifts of the day. Don't you think it's right for those who have money to give expensive presents, supposing always, as you say, they're given from real affection? Sometimes, undoubtedly. Savior did not condemn her who broke an Plaster box of ointment, very precious, simply as proof of love, even though the suggestion were made. This might have been sold for 300 pence and given to the poor. I thought he would regard with sympathy the fond efforts which human love sometimes makes to express itself by gifts, the rarest and most costly. How I rejoiced with all my heart when Charles Linton gave his poor mother that splendid Chinese shawl and golden watch, because I knew they came from the very fullness of his heart to a mother he could not do too much for, a mother that has done much and suffered everything for him. Some such cases, when resources are ample, a costly gift seems to have a graceful appropriateness. I cannot approve of it. If it exhausts all the means of doing for the poor, it is better than to give a simple offer, and to do something for those who really need it. Eleanor looked thoughtful. Her aunt laid down her knitting, and said, in a tone of gentle seriousness, "Whose birth does Christmas coronate, Ella?" "Of Saviour's, certainly, aunt." "Yes," said her aunt. "And when and how was he born? In a stable, laid in a manger, thus born that, in all ages, he might be known as the brother and friend of the poor. And surely it seems appropriate to commemorate his birthday by an especial remembrance of the lowly, the poor, the outcast, and distressed. If Christ should come back to our city on Christmas Day, where should we think it most appropriate to his character to find him? Would he be carrying splendid gifts dwelling to dwelling, or will he be gliding about in the cheerless haunts of the desolate, poor, and forsaken, and the sorrowful?" And here the conversation ended. "What sort of Christmas present is Ella buying?" said Cousin Tom, as the waiter handed in a portentous-looking passage, which had just rung in at the door. "Let's open it," said saucy Will. "Upon my word, 2 great gray blanket shawls. These must be for you and me, Tom. What's this? A great bowl of cotton flannel and gray yarn stockings." The bell rang again. The waiter brought in another porky parcel, deposited it on the marble center table. "What's here?" said Will, cutting the cord. "Phew! A perfect nest of packages. Oolong tea, oranges, grapes, white sugar. Bless me, Ella must be going to housekeeping." "Oh, going crazy," said Tom. "My word," he said, looking out the window. There's a dryman ringing at the door with a stove, a tea kettle set on top of it. "Ella's cook stove, of course," said Will. Just this moment, as the young lady entered, her purse hanging gracefully over her hand. "Now, boys, you are too bad," she exclaimed, as each of the mischievous youngsters was gravely marched up and down, attired in a grey shawl. "Didn't you get them for us? We thought you did," said both. "Ella, I want some of that cotton flannel to make me a pair of pantaloons," said Tom. "I say, Ella," said Will, "when are you going to housekeeping? Your cooking stove is standing in the street, on my word. John is loading some coal on the tray with it." "Ella, isn't that going to be sent to my office?" said Tom. "You know, I do languish for a new stove with a tea kettle in the top to heat a fellow's shaving water." Just then, another ring at the door. The grinning waiter made a small brown paper parcel for Miss Ella. Tom made a dive at it, staving off the brown paper, and developed a jaunty little purple velvet cap with silver tassels. "My smoking cap, as I live," he said. "Only I shall have to wear it on my thumb instead of my head. Too small entirely," said he, shaking his head gravely. "Come, you saucy boy," said Auntie, entering briskly. "What are you teasing Ella for?" "Why, to see this lot of things, Aunt. What in the world is Ella going to do with them?" "Oh, I know." "You know, then I can guess, Aunt. It is some of your charitable works." We're going to make a juvenile Lady Bountiful of Elle, eh? Ella, who had curled the roots of her hot hair at the expose, were very unfashionable Christmas preparations now took heart, bestowed a very gentle and salutary little cuff on the saucy head that still wore the purple hat, and then hastened to gather up her various purchases. Laugh away, she said gaily, and a good many others will laugh too over these things. I got them to make people laugh, keeping them in the habit of laughing. Well, well, I see into it, said Will. I tell you, I think right well of the idea too. There are worlds of money wasted at this time of year, getting things that nobody wants and nobody cares for after they are got. I am glad, for my part, that you are going to get up a variety in this line. In fact, I should like to give you one of these stray leaves to help on, he said, dropping a $10 note into her paper. I'd like to encourage girls to think of something besides pins and sugar candy. But our story spins on too long. If anybody wants to see the results of Ella's first attempts at good fairyism, they can call at the doors of 2 or 3 old buildings on Christmas morning, and they shall hear all about it. Not terrible. No. Not my favorite. All right. Let's see. Nice little poem. Snowman. Oh, the beautiful snow. We're all in a glow. Nellie, Dolly, Willie, and Dan. The primest of fun, when all said and done. It's just making a big snowman. 2 stones for his eyes. Look quite owlishly wise. A hard pinch of snow for his nose. And a mouth that's as big as the snout of a pig. And he'll want an old pipe, I suppose, when the snowman is done. And tomorrow what fun to make pies with snow cannon all day, to pelt him with balls till he totters and falls, and then when they fall, comes and melts him away. That was a fun little poem. Boom, boom. Oh, this one should. Gotta read this one at least every year. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mama in her handkerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. And when out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, to open the shutters and threw up the sash. 'Twas The moon on the breast of newly fallen snow gave luster midday to objects below. When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be Saint Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner, and Blitzen, and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away all. As dry leaves before a wild hurricane fly, and they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky. So too, to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head, was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur, from his head to his foot. His clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. The bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked on a peddler, just opening his back. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry, his cheeks were like roses, and his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth, drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A twinkle of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. Spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled up all the stockings, and turned with a jerk, and laying his finger alongside his nose, gave a nod, and up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team, gave a whistle, and away they all flew, like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. That's a nice one. Well, we read the night before Christmas. How about the night after Christmas? Twas the night after Christmas, and all through the house not a creature was stirring, excepting a mouse. The stockings were flung in haste over the chair, for hopes of St. Nicholas were no longer there. The children were restlessly tossing in bed, for the pie and the candy were as heavy as lead, while Mamma in her kerchief and I in my gown just made up our minds that we would not lie down. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my chair to see what was the matter. Away to my window I went with a dash, flung up the shutter and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the newly fallen snow gave the luster of noonday to objects below, when what to my long anxious eyes should appear but a horse and a sleigh, both old-fashioned and queer. The little old driver, so solemn and slow, I knew at a glance it must be Dr. Moreau. I drew in my head and was turning around, When upstairs came the doctor with scarcely a sound. He wore a thick overcoat, made long ago, and a beard on his chin as white with the snow. He spoke a few words, and went straight to his work. He felt all the pulses, and then turned with a jerk, laying his finger on the side of his nose with a nod of his head. To the chimney goes. Spoonful of oil, ma'am, if you have it handy. No nuts, no raisins, milk highs, no candy. These tender young stomachs cannot well digest all the sweets that they get. Toys and books are the best, but my advice will not find many friends, for the custom of Christmas the other way trends. Father and mothers and Santa Claus too are exceedingly blind. Well, good night to you. And I heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, these feastings and candies make doctor bills right. Alright, that was a fun one. Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Do I want to read The Little Match Girl? And it's just an Anderson is a classic, but I don't think I really want to read a sad story. Dun, dun, dun. How long is a Christmas? Too long. At least, it's not the only thing I'm reading. Ooh, offbeat Christmas stories. This might be. Alright. Oh no, that's a really long one. Let's see. Alright. Reginald's Christmas Revel. H.H. Moreau. Reginald's Christmas Revel is a remembrance of Reginald's eventful Christmas with the Babwolds. Moreau's wit is uncanny, perfect holiday reading, featured in The Unreliable Narrator. Alright. They say, said Reginald, there's nothing sadder than victory except defeat. If you've ever stayed with dull people during what is alleged to be the festive season, you can probably revise that saying. I shall never forget putting in a Christmas at the Babwalds. Mrs. Babwald is some relation of my father's. A sort of to be left till called for cousin, and that was considered sufficient reason for my having to accept her invitation at about the 6th time of asking. Though why the sins of the father should be visited by children, you won't find any notepaper in that drawer. That's where I keep old menus and first night programs. Mrs. Babwald wears a rather solemn personality, has never been known to smile. Even when saying disagreeable things to her friends or making out the stores list, she takes her pleasure sadly. A state elephant at a dauber gives one a very similar impression. Her husband gardens in all weathers. When a man goes out in the pouring rain to brush caterpillars off rose trees, I generally imagine his life indoors leaves something to be desired. Anyway, it must be very unsettling for the caterpillars. Of course, there were other people there. There was a Major Somebody who had shot things in Lapland or something of the sort. I forget what they were, but it wasn't for want of reminding. We had them cold with every meal almost, and he was continually giving us details of what they measured from tip to tip, as though he thought we were going to make them warm under things for the winter. I used to listen to him with rapt attention, and I thought rather suited me. And then, one day, I quite modestly gave to the dimensions of an oak pie I had shot in the Lochshire's fens. The Major turned a beautiful Tyrian scarlet. I remember thinking at the time I should like my next bathroom hung that color. I think that at that moment he almost found it in his heart to dislike me. Miss Baldwin put on a first aid to the injured expression and asked him why he didn't publish a book of his sporting reminiscences. It'd be so interesting. She didn't remember till afterwards that he gave her 2 fat volumes on the subject, with his portrait and autograph as a front piece and an appendix on the habits of the Arctic mussel. It was an evening that we cast aside the cares and dictations of the day and really lived. Cards were thought to be too frivolous and empty a way of passing the time, so most of them played what they called a book game. You went out into the hall to get inspiration, I suppose, and you came in again with a muffler tied around your neck and looked silly, and the others were supposed to guess that you were wee MacGregor. I held out against the inanity as long as I decently could, but at last, in a lapse of good nature, I consented to masquerade as a book, only I warned that it would take some time to carry out. They waited for the best part of 40 minutes while I went and played wine-glass skittles with the page boy in the pantry. You play it with a crampon cork, you know, and the one who knocks down the most glasses without breaking them wins. I won, with 4 unbroken out of 7. I think William suffered from over-anxiousness. They're mad in the drawing room at my not having come back, and they weren't. A bit pacified when I told him afterwards that I was at the end of the passage. I never did like Kipling's, was Mrs. Baldwin's comment. And the situation dawned upon her. I couldn't see anything clever in the earthworms out of Tuscany. Or is that by Darwin? Of course, these games are very educational, but personally, I prefer bridge. On Christmas evening, we were supposed to be festive in the old English fashion. The hall was horribly draughty, but it seemed to be the proper place to revel in. And was decorated with Japanese fans, Chinese lanterns gave it a very Old English affect. The young lady with a confidential voice favored us with a long recitation about a little girl who died or did something equally hackneyed, and the major gave us a graphic account of a struggle he had with a wounded bear. I privately wished that the bears would win sometimes on these occasions. At least they wouldn't go vaporing about it afterwards. Before we had time to recover our spirits, we were indulged with some thought reading by a young man whom one knew instinctively had a good mother and an indifferent tailor. Sort of young man who talks unflaggingly through the thickest soup and smooths his hair dubiously as though he thought it might hit back. Thought reading was rather a success. He announced that the hostess was thinking about poetry, and she admitted that her mind was dwelling on one of Austen's odes, which was near enough. I fancied she had been really wondering whether a scraggle end of mutton and some cold plum pudding would do for the kitchen dinner next day. As a crowning dispensation, they all sat down to play progressive Hamala with milk chocolate for prizes. I've been carefully brought up. I don't like to play games of skill for milk chocolate, so I invented a headache and retired from the scene. I had been preceded a few minutes earlier by Miss Langshan Smith, a rather formidable lady, who always got up at some uncomfortable hour in the morning, gave you the impression that she had been in communication with most of the European governments before breakfast. There was a paper pinned on her door with a signed request that she might be called particularly early on the morrow. Such an opportunity does not come twice in a lifetime. I covered up everything except the signature with another notice, to the effect that these words should meet the eye. To the effect that before these words should meet the eye, who would have ended a misspent life, was sorry for the trouble she was giving, and would like a military funeral. A few minutes later, I violently exploded an air-filled bag on the landing and gave a stage moan that could be heard in the cellars. I then pursued my original intention and went to bed. The noise those people made in forcing open the good lady's door was positively indecorous. She resisted gallantly, but I believe they searched for bullets for a quarter of an hour, as if she had been in a historic battlefield. I hate traveling on Boxing Day. One must occasionally do things that one dislikes. Not a fan of that one. Let's try to find at least one more. Okay. The Snowflake Tree by Mary E. Wilkins Freeland. Hawthorne is dead, the rose leaves have fled, the north wind over the sea. Now the petals will fall, are the rarest of all, sweetheart, from the snowflake tree. The tree doth stand in that marvelous land, whose shore, like the sapphire gleams, where a crown hangs high in the northern sky, forth raying its golden beams. It tosses its brows with their crystalline blows, they crackle and tinkle for glee, when the north wind shrieks around the awful peaks on the shore of the polar sea. And never a bird its blossoms has stirred, or built on its branches his nest, for the perfume which floats from the blossoms floats, would freeze the song in its rest. My own little bird, were a Goldilocks stirred by the wind through its branches which blows, with her song silenced all, forever would fall asleep on the silver snows. But our hearth burns bright, little sweetheart, tonight, somewhere far from the snowflake tree, thou can nestle in bed, thy tiny gold head, and thy song shall awaken with thee. Ah, that was a cute little poem. Let's take a look at who's available to raid. Alright. Meet's on. She's doing some VR things. Looks like she's looking at some Christmas stuff. Worlds. I'll send you on over to there. I hope you all have a good night.